Greetings, welcome back for Phaladipika. We're now up to 9th chapter. What were those other chapters? Let's just review for a second. I myself am having trouble remembering the first few. The first one was Rashi. Gave categorizations and information about the 12 zodiac signs. The second one was what? Having trouble remembering back that far. Let's review. Where is it? Here it is. Second one is Graha Bhed. So that is the information about each particular planet. So first chapter was Rashi Bhed, which is information about each particular zodiac sign. More like the categorizations and stuff. Then about the planets was chapter 2. And then 3 was the zodiac divisions, wasn't it? Yeah, 3 was Varga Vibhag. So it's how you divide the zodiac into the subdivisions. Very interesting that was chapter 3. Would not expect that in a modern book to come at such an early chapter. But for these people, that is very fundamentally important stuff. So it needs to be defined in the beginning. And then again, the 4th chapter is Shadbala. Very, very mathematically complex calculation right at the beginning of the book. So very different than the way modern astrology texts go about it. So he's putting 2 very intense mathematical things right at the beginning. This is what the zodiac signs are. This is what the planets are. Now calculate Shadbal. Now calculate Vargas. Because in their mind, it's equally important. It's not advanced stuff. Everything is based on this. So you have to define it first. 5th division was the 5th chapter was a short chapter on interpreting careers, ideal careers. So first two chapters was signs and planets, and then 3 and 4 was Vargas and Shadbala calculations, and then 5 was a short thing about how you can figure out how you should earn money. 6th chapter was about yogas. Many people might consider that the most interesting chapter so far. I had a whole bunch of different yoga. A very long chapter with a lot of different yogas. Yogas means combinations. The 4th Lord is in the 11th house, while the 11th Lord is in the 2nd house, equals blah, blah, blah. Stuff like that. And then the 7th was yogas, how they affect kings as opposed to common people. And so that chapter was very interesting because it showed us the importance not just of interpreting the chart, but of using your eyes and your ears and your everything to have common sense about what reality the chart pertains to. If the chart says you'll live in a high place and you look and the person's living on top of a mountain, then you already understood the interpretation. But if you look and the person lives in the Netherlands, then you have to say, I bet you live in the top of your building. So you have to take the basic symbolism from the chart and know what to apply it to. So that was how the 7th chapter was interesting. So first 2 chapters were Rashi's signs and planets, and then the 3rd and 4th were how to calculate Vargas and planetary strength. The 5th and 6th and 7th were about interpretations. So the 5th was about how to interpret career, the 6th was about yogas in general, and the 7th was about how to apply yogas to people with a lot of political power inherent in them. And then the 8th chapter we just did. That was planets in houses. And now we're starting... see, it says Bhavashraya Pala is the chapter for Ashtamadhyaya, the 8th chapter. Where the title for the 9th chapter is Rashipala. But it's not Rashi Ashraya Pala. So in fact, we don't find this chapter is not going to be like If the sun is in Aries, blah blah. If the sun is in Taurus, blah blah. It's not going to follow that same pattern like was followed for the houses. It's actually going to be about the rising signs, the signs as rising signs. So here we are, beginning the 9th chapter. Let's have a go at it. Okay. So here's what he says. Vritikshano durbala janurugro birujale syal lagubuk sukami sanchara shilas chapalo nirtukti Varnan gitanga kriyabhe prajata. So vritikshano means that their vritti is with their iksha. They live by their eyes. So we'll talk about what that actually means. They live with their eyes. The Aries ascendant lives with their eyes. Durbala janurugro. This is a difficult one to translate. When you do translations of things, you require three expertises. The first expertise is in the source language, obviously, right? Like you would need to know Sanskrit to be able to translate this. The second expertise is in the destination language. If you're translating from Sanskrit to English, then you need to know Sanskrit and English. The third expertise is the subject itself. So it takes all three of those things sometimes to get a translation correct. Durbala janurugro. Some people want to break it up to mean something about their legs. Like you can commonly find this translated to mean the legs, which is uru. Uru is like your thighs. Yeah, kind of like your thighs coming reaching up to your butt. Uru is durbala. But there's a couple of extra syllables in here that don't make sense with that translation. Durbala means weak. Uru means legs. So some people will say, this guy's Mantreshwar is saying the Aries ascendant has weak legs. Or weak knees, I've seen people even say. But that's not really the best translation at all. Anurug. Rug is, he uses this word a lot, especially whenever he's talking about Rahu in the science. You heard this word rug a lot. Rug means illness. So durbala means weakness. Durbala janu, things that come from weakness. Rugra, to be gripped by an illness. So this makes sense with the Aries ascendant. This is what I mean. If you need to know the source language, the destination language, and the subject. So when you're trying to figure out what an author meant by a word, you need to know the subject that they're talking about. And you should know a little bit about the Aries ascendant. They treat weakness like a disease. So far we know two things about the Aries ascendant according to Mantreshwar. They live by their eyes. They live with their eyes. And they treat weakness like a disease. We'll talk about each one in a second. The third thing he says is pure jale. You can break it up a little bit. Birujale. That means they get scared when they're in water, or they have a hard time in water. Very interesting phrasing that he's using for all this stuff. Lives with their eyes, has a hard time in water, and thinks that weakness is a disease. Syat, it's conjugated. Syat means it should be. Again, you'll just find this word all over the place. Because it's not definite that it's going to happen from an Aries ascendant, because Aries ascendant can come with all different kinds of other placements. But in general, this is what the Aries ascendant contributes. Laghu book. We can break that up to make it easier too. Laghu book means eats quickly. Some people would translate it say that eats lightly. But I think the person who translated as Laghu book doesn't really understand the Aries ascendant. The word Laghu can mean quick or light, etc., etc. This is what I mean. When you translate, you need to not just know the languages, but the subject. Eats quickly. So now we know he said 4 things about Aries ascendant. Lives with their eyes, thinks that weakness is a disease, suffers in water, and eats quickly. None of this stuff seems very practical, but it is, because he's painting images and symbolisms of Aries. And we'll talk about what they imply. Sukami, good desires. Or a lot of desires. Good at desiring. Sanchara. Samchara. They move around. Sanchari. Oh, Sanchari. I just realized it's Sanchari. Sanchara is just a different way of pronouncing Sanchari or Vyabhichari. So there's other implications about this word that are interesting with traveling. I'll mention them when we look at this in more detail. Shilash Chapalo. Their manners fluctuate. The manners fluctuate. The way they behave fluctuates. Nirtokti. Okay, this is also going pretty crazy in the... Guys, if you want to have a discussion about... Right, Joan Jivan or Lone Jivan. For your questions about tropical, just go here. Alright. So we know what so far? Lives with their eyes. Thinks weakness is disease. Suffers in water. Eats quickly. Good desires. Traveling, which also is a little difficult to translate. Fluctuating manners. Nritokti, manly speech. I've seen this word portrayed as anrita. Nritokti means nrita ukti. They speak like a nri. They speak like a man. We'll talk about what that means. But I've also seen the text written out as anriti ukti. And then the translator wants to say that means they speak lies. But there's a missing R, I believe, if you do it that way. You can I would have to take this to a grammar expert to see about that. Chapalaha nirtokti. Maybe it should have been chapala nirtokti if it's missing the A. So we have 2 things there. 2 things simultaneously. It could have been written. It's difficult to see the letter in this part. It could be manly speech, which, knowing Aries, I like that translation. Or it can be false promises. But yeah, that's kind of the same thing. It's kind of the same thing. I would go to the Nritokti. We'll talk about it. And then the last thing he says is kind of common. Vranankitanga. Vrana Ankita Anga. Might as well do that down here. Vrana Ankita Anga is the body has bruises. Kriya Be. If it's in the sign of Kriya, which is Aries. Prajata, somebody born there. So what he's saying is someone born in Aries, it means Aries ascendant. Someone born with an Aries ascendant will live with their eyes, treat the weakness as a disease, but be scared of water or suffer in water. Eat very quickly, have good desires, travel a lot, fluctuate in their manners and behavior, speak in a manly way, and have injuries. Or have marks or scars. So, in case you can't tell, this is all quite symbolic. These things mean things symbolically. What do you mean lives with their eyes? What do you mean suffers in water? Does it literally mean that they are hydrophobic? Biruru jale? No. All right, so uses their eyes. Aries, this means, Vritekshana means you see something and then you go for it. This is the characteristic of Aries as a sign, and therefore as the Aries ascendant. You set your goals quickly, and you get attracted to things quickly because eye is a very fast sense. It doesn't take time to figure it out. It's not a complicated thing. It's a simple perception. So the meaning of uses their eyes or lives with their eyes is they see something and then they want it and then they go for it. And also, they're concerned with the way things look. They are, so the Aries, its nature is male. It belongs to Mars and it's a fire sign and it's cardinal. It couldn't get more male. So it's extro. So it's concerned with the outer shape of things. It's concerned with the form of things. It's concerned with that. It doesn't care much about the substance. Like Dhruva's father, King Tanapada. He had two wives, Suniti and Suruchi. The one who was very smart, Suniti, and the one who was very good looking, Suruchi. Not that the one who was smart was not good looking, but that was their primary quality. Well, he liked Suruchi better because he's male. So there you go. They live with their eyes. Treats weakness like a disease. So the way this is worded is so super interesting. Here's somebody who doesn't want to be afraid. Just like you don't want to get corona virus. The Aries ascendant doesn't want to get scared. They don't want to be scared. They don't want to be terrified. They don't want to be weak. They don't want to be weak. But especially they don't want to look weak. So they have a weakness. Their weakness is their fear of weakness. They'll go out of their way. Like the OCD person who gets afraid of something like a germ or dirt or something. Now all of a sudden that becomes their weakness instead of it being something reasonable. Aries can spiral like that. They'll go to too much extreme, too much length to look strong. Or to be strong, when strength is not really an asset in this situation. And then this one suffers in water. Well, it doesn't just mean like they don't like to go in swimming pools. I don't know that many people with the Aries ascendant because they don't gravitate towards me because of the nature of what the Aries ascendant is, but I did have one close friend with an Aries ascendant. He lived in Florida. He would go to the beach, of course, but never go in the water. Just hang out on the beach and get black. Get super tanned. Interesting character. Matches all this stuff very strongly. So yeah, okay, you can put it that way. Like they don't like to go swimming. But how useful is that interpretation? It's only useful when you're at an astrology conference and you want to look really cool. And you say, I bet you don't like to swim. And the person's like, oh my God. But it doesn't really help the person very much. So what does it really mean, suffers in water? Think about the Aries ascendant. The Aries ascendant is fire. It's very fiery. Here's where the symbolism is coming in. Aries ascendant belongs to Mars and is fire element. And his cardinal likes to move. Stick it in water and see how that goes out. Fire goes out and it can't move. So what does fire mean? What does water mean? What do those things symbolize? What the Aries, what Mantreshwar is saying is, don't put Aries in a situation where you're going to talk about your feelings. Don't put Aries in a situation where sensitivity is very required. Don't forget, he said syat. It should be like this. Every Aries has a different chart, but this is just in general about what the Aries ascendant part of the chart contributes to the interpretation. And it comes right after he says Durbala Uruja. They try to avoid being weak, but they're scared of water. So Björk has a song. Can't handle love or something. What's so scary? What's so scary about this feminine stuff, you big man? But that's the Aries ascendant. That kind of stuff, the gentle stuff, the revealing your heart, the being quiet together, the talking together, that's terrifying for Aries. Introspective, ask them to be introspective, they get scared. All right. So that's Virtakshana, Durbala, Janurugro, and Burujale. Now Lagubuk, eats quickly. Just picture the person who sits down and eats really fast. They don't take their time to eat, they eat really fast. Then you understand what Mantreshwar is talking about. So they're in a rush. Aries is in a rush. It doesn't mean they eat lightly. Aries has a big appetite. That's why they're called Sukami. So that's another way that you can get the translation right, even if you don't know the subject, is if you just make sure all the words that you're translating make sense together. Yeah, Aries has a big appetite, Sukami, but Lagubuk, it eats very lightly or quickly. It doesn't make a big deal about it. It doesn't make big meals, but it eats a lot. It doesn't make fancy meals, but it eats a lot. It'll be done quick also, unfortunately. So it rushes. Aries will tend to rush the experience. Because when you live with your eyes, then you want to get to the destination, touch it, see it, and then you're done. Just the surface. The surface is very understandable quickly. So the motive of Aries, this is really the whole thing behind Aries. The motive of Aries is that it's quick. That's why it doesn't like to be in water, because water slows it down. That's why it doesn't like to be weak, because then it can't sprint. So one thing about eats quickly you should know is it's just in general, they will not savor the experience. They'll have kind of the quick, superficial experience of things. Many things. And another meaning is not eating slowly means you get bad health. You get ulcers, you get stomach problems. Aries is quite prone to stomach problems because most likely, Syat, they have too much acidity. Because the ascendant belongs to fire and Mars. So they tend to sacrifice the health. C2, you can just analyze it by the imagery that he gave, and it comes out very nice. Lagubuk, they have a lot of appetite. That's what it means. So they're not gonna. That's how this word Sukami and Lagubuk work together. You need to understand it in a way that all the words work together. They have a lot of appetite. They're very hungry, so they devour the food right away. They're not gourmet or anything. Now this one, Tsukami. You can take this. You can make Tsukami mean they're good at sex, or they're good at pleasure, but they eat quickly. So remember, those two things have to sit together. So it's not really that. That is not the primary implication of Tsukami. Why are these things written symbolically and a little bit vague? Because the word is syat. It should be something like this. This is the contribution of the propensity inclined or indicated by the Aries ascendant. It can be something within this range, depending on what the rest of the factors are. So it could be that the Aries ascendant could help a person become very sensually acute, because Vritekshana, they live with their eyes. They live by the senses. But Tsukami mostly means ambitious. Very ambitious. That goes very well with all the rest of the stuff that we heard about Aries. Tsukami, they have a lot of desires. They have a lot of enthusiasm. They have a lot of motivation. This is also why they don't like to slow down and eat. They don't like to slow down and talk. That's why they eat fast. That's why they don't like water. Weird thing though, my friend with Aries, I seem to always remember him carrying around a bottle of water. Because you need to drink a lot of water when you're an Aries ascendant. So it's in water, jale. It's not that they don't like water. They don't like to be in water. Okay, then this other one, Sanchara, I have a better explanation than what's written down. So one thing is simple about Samchara means there's a lot of chara. There's a lot of moving around. So one of the things it means is don't expect him to get married. Don't expect him to do commitments. The only way that you will get the Aries ascendant to make a commitment is when it ties in with the Tsukami. But it's rare that the Tsukami, that their ambition, it's rare that their ambition will be for something very long term. Don't forget, you can have an Aries ascendant with a Taurus moon, and then you have quite a different story. You can have an Aries ascendant with a Sagittarius moon, and it could be quite a lot like this. And all kinds of different permutations. But just Aries itself, hypothetically divorced from everything else, if you have like the Aries person, the only way that you would get them to make a promise or a vow or a commitment to a long-term partnership is when it's obviously serving their interest. So that's one implication of Samchara. They will always move. The other thing is they need that space to move. That's what I mean by they need freedom. They like freedom. They feel that the commitments and everything tie them down. In a sense, this will not only affect the love life, but it will also affect careers and things. They like things with a lot of freedom. They don't like to take a typical route where it takes a long time to climb a ladder and stay in a particular thing. They'd like to rather have a lot of different, put out a lot of different seeds. But the other thing now about Sanchara, the actual Sanskrit word and how it's used. Sanchara is used in psychology, in Sanskrit psychology, to mean the emotion that contradicts the basic emotion. So the idea of Samchara, which has a synonym as Vyabhichara, is that the ocean makes waves, and then those waves come back. They pull back into the ocean, and then that makes the ocean kind of muddy. So when we have one emotion, it produces emotions, other emotions, and then those other emotions interact with the first one. And often they'll clash with it and push it a little bit and change it into a different shape. And that's the concept of Sanchara. So the Aries ascendant is like that, actually. It doesn't just Sanchara. So Sanchara doesn't just mean they move around a lot. It means that, but it also means they are contrary. They'll fight back. they're not compliant, and they're not conformant. The Aries ascendant is not conformant. That's a good translation for sun chart, non-conformant. Okay. They'll have their own quirks. They'll have their own opinions. They'll have their own way of doing something. And then related to that was Shila Chapala. Sanchara Shila Chapala. So that means their Shila, or their behavior, their manners, is Chapala, unreliable. So it means sometimes they'll be nice, sometimes they'll be mean. Sometimes they'll be gentle, sometimes they'll be harsh. So you can characterize it as mood swings. You can characterize it as short-term relationships also. This is another thing that indicates short-term relationships. Because Shila generally means your affectionate behavior. Chapala, it goes all, it's not steady. So they'll be very affectionate at 10 p.m., but at 1 a.m. they're gone. Suddenly treats people and things differently. Shila Chapala. And then this other thing that I talked about, Nritokti. Nritokti, manly speaking. Or maybe it is Anriti Okti, in which case we have the right grammar, but we're missing an R. Or maybe we could get away with it. The explanation that I'll give of it will work for either way you do it. It makes claims. This is what manly speech... It's assertive. That's basically the thing. It's assertive. So it doesn't necessarily mean rough. It can mean rough. But the essence of manly speech is not necessarily rough, but it's assertive and confident. That's why it gets a little rough, because it's very clear. It's too clear. So sometimes that's rough. Harshness, things which are harsh are also hard. So the thing about men is men make promises. They have to make promises because they're chapala. So manly speech means somebody who likes to make a promise or make a claim. They'll make claims. I can do X, Y, Z for you. Women don't really need to make the claims. The claims are evident. Men have to speak the claims because it's more about their action, what they're going to provide to the relationship. So manly speech is always advertising. I'm the best one on the block. I'm the best one at the school. I'm the best blah, 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 blah. So that's one nature of Aries, is it likes to claim. And the other thing is it likes to promise. So it's got this weird nature where it's asserting its abilities and it's asserting its confidence, but it's also Shila Chapala. So it's saying, I'm the best artist, right? If you have some other combinations in the chart, you can get Aries come out like this. I'm the best artist, but they'll leave a lot of their paintings unfinished. Now, if it's Anriti Okti, which means they speak lies, it's just the same thing as this. It's just kind of saying it from behind. You make promises, but you're not steady, then you're not going to fulfill those promises. So that means Anriti Okti. Or all the big speech. There's big speech and little delivery. Loud bark, not much bite. Bruised body, adventurous. That means they're adventurous. You have scars? That means you did a lot of wild things. Probably. And so this is the nature of Aries, is that they put themselves in situations which result in scars. Of course, it also can mean birthmarks and etc., etc., etc. But really, the thing to take away from this concept of Aries having marks on their body is they do risky stuff. Because Sukami, because they have a lot of ambition, so it also means they have a lot of hunger for adventure. Okay, I'm going to dare to look at the chat now and see what you loud people are talking about while I'm trying to talk to you. And I'll see if you have any questions about Aries. Fit. Somebody says fitness. Yeah, Emma DeLoop says something very interesting. I find women with prominent Aries very attractive. Basically, every man does. Basically, everybody does. Because it's... too much femininity is not really the best, and too much masculinity is not really the best. It's where you have the interesting recipes. So the perfect example for that is Angelina Jolie. Seema says something about me is extremely Aries, but I'm not sure what. Brian, who's I think he's saying is an Aries descendant. My face is scarred up due to fights and adventures. Nice. Mitra says, why am I fitting into these descriptions? I'm an Aquarius ascendant, but I have a massive Mars. How massive? Okay, my husband is Aries rising, making promises they can't keep. Sorry, Nina. My Ayurvedic doctor, Bonzi, says, has me sit to eat. That is a good doctor. In what way would these principles play if you have Aries rising in the D9? Again, you don't need to ask that question. You just need to understand how to use the divisionals. Then you already know the answer. How many descriptions, James asks. How many descriptions were given in total about Aries? Well, let's count them. How does that count in Sesame Street talk? Let us count this. No, that's my Papa Swami Papaji. I don't know. Let's hear this 1 second. Sesame Street. Count. What do you sound like? Here we go. It's very important. Now I have to sit through an ad for 5 seconds. And here we go.
All greetings, it is I, the Count, and it's time to answer that fascinating question. What is the Sesame Street number of the day? Let's count the bats and fun.
All right, let's count the Aries. What is the number of qualities of the Aries? Vritekshana. Durbalajan Rugo. Durbala. You can't really even break it up. Durbalajan Anu. Let's do this. Nah, just leave it alone. Vritekshana uses. Let's do it in English. Lives with their eyes. So simple. Lives with their eyes. Treats weakness like a disease. Suffers in water. Eats quickly. Has strong desires. Travels, aka is contrary. Fluctuating manners. Manly speech. Or very barky. And bruised body. So that's 9 in total. Komodo asks, so when reading from different houses, do we use the interpretations, like if Aries was the 9th, would the interpretation be manly speech in regards to religion or dharma? Well, Komodo, actually, interesting, you answered the person's question about if Aries rises in the D9. That's how you do that. If Aries is in the 9th, then it simply means that Leo is the ascendant. This is the thing. I'm just reading you this book, which is my favorite book on astrology. But it doesn't mean it's necessarily the way that I would do it. I'm just following what he's doing, Mantreshwar, and just explaining what he's thinking. I have a certain way of explaining the rising signs, which takes a lot longer than he does. Which is that you understand the planets that rule the houses when something rises. So, for example, when Aries rises, well, then Jupiter rules 12, but also 9. But Jupiter is friendly to Aries. So this is why they make a lot of promises, 9, but they're Chapala. They might not keep them, 12. And then who rules the 10th? 10th and 11th, Saturn. They're pretty hard and not very sophisticated. They eat lightly. They eat quickly. So you can go through rising signs. You can understand the rising sign by virtue of looking at how the rest of the signs become houses for that ascendant, and then which lord rules each house. That's how you can get under the hood to figure out where these interpretations come from. So that is my response to Komodo Polycrypto blog. Would having strong Mars in the ascendant give the native an Aries rising vibe? Yes, because Mars is the ruler of Aries. La Merinda Astral says, all said here about Aries rising. I was able to connect to the people I know. With this placement, great data. Good. Hello, Bardo. Bardo says, ooh, this is a really cool approach. God, is that not available in my book? Didn't I do the chapter like that? Do I want to find the count of Sesame Street again? In the Radically Deep Fundamentals of Astrology, don't I do the rising signs that way? I think I explained the rising signs that way. Okay, I gotta go. Farewell.